The Constitutional Court will on Tuesday begin hearing arguments in a legal challenge against energy giant Shell's plans to conduct seismic blasting for oil and gas off the ecologically sensitive Wild Coast. The case represents the culmination of a nearly 3-year fight by environmental activists, fishing communities and civil society groups. They argue that the exploratory project poses an existential threat to marine life and violates the rights of local communities who hold the sea sacred. Let's talk more about this with Program Manager at Masifundise, that is Carmen Mannarino. Carmen, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And I think let's begin with, I think you are in court currently still, and just how the proceedings are going.
Thanks, Masa. Thanks for having me. Yes, we're still in court. The justices are hoping to finish today with hearing the arguments from the different parties. And the way things going are, well, I mean, it's difficult to say at this point, but what we do know is that the justices are asking a lot of questions, especially to the respondents. So this is Impact Africa, Shell, and the MRE, around the specific question of how can be that a permit that has been deemed unlawful at High Court level and Supreme Court of Appeal level can now be renewed. And this is the question really that is central to the court case as is been heard at the Constitutional Court.
And as well, Carmen, being the Wild Coast boasting such pristine marine life, already that decision has been made, as you mentioned as well. So do you believe that the post-facto consultation can legally or ethically cure a flawed environmental approval process?
Well, this is what we are saying as fishing communities, civil society and environmental groups. We are saying that this cannot cure that process. I mean, all over these past few years, as you said, this fight has been going on because coastal communities themselves, they've been so clear about the fact that they do not want to see this oil and gas exploration moving on the Wild Coast. And this is because of the deep concerns that they have for the environment, for their livelihood, but also for the culture. In a culture where the ancestors are resting in the sea, that's where the ancestors are. How can we be okay with this being disturbed by oil and gas exploration? And so this is the point. Why should be a permit that didn't follow the due process in terms of being granted? And then when communities themselves are standing up and saying, we don't want this, how can a renewed process be granted instead of saying, well, you need to go back to the drawing board and start the process afresh so that you can meaningfully consult and you can gauge whether this can go ahead from an environmental point of view, from a livelihood and social economic rights point of view, and also from a cultural and spiritual rights point of view, because this is also central to this case.
Yeah, and as you're mentioning as well, those coastal communities have repeatedly rejected such proposals and projects as well. So how does this case, the Shell case, reflect on South Africa's ability to enforce its own environmental and constitutional laws without any political or corporate interference?
Well, I think that's what this case is going to tell us. So where is South Africa standing on when it comes to balancing between rights that communities have in terms of socioeconomic rights, right to food, the right to livelihood, the right to culture, versus the rights of companies to exploit our environment for profit making. I mean, this is also especially in the light of the fact that we already know that we're living in a climate crisis. We've seen the effects of that climate crisis all over the coastline every year. And so this is more of a reason to say this shouldn't be allowed. But yes, I think that this is why we went all the way to the Constitutional Court with this case, because we need to hear from the court whether they're going to sort of prioritize the rights of companies versus the rights of communities as should be in terms of the Constitution.
And, lastly, Carmen, you've succinctly just mentioned how important, of course, maritime life is for the community as well and how sacred it is. If you could also talk about what are some of the known potential risks of seismic surveys and drilling to marine life, such as, you know, we've got beautiful whales, fish stocks, and all that's along the wild coast.
Yes. Well, I'm not a scientist. We do work with fishing communities, but what we have learned in this process is that seismic surveys can be highly disturbing for the environment. I mean, we are talking about sound blasting at the level that it's, really creating a disturbance for the marine environment. And this is the major concern that we have. We have heard that these seismic surveys have been going on for some time, and we have been wondering whether this is also impacting on the availability of fish that we are seeing on the coastline, where more and more as small-scale fishers, especially those that are fishing from the shore or near shore, they are saying we are not seeing fish anymore, and we are also wondering whether this is having an impact on that in terms of how seismic surveys are conducted. But also, I mean, seismic survey will be a first stage, right? If this is, if the seismic surveys are successful, then we will see drilling. And this is also what communities want to prevent. We do not want to see drilling of oil and gas in our ocean. We have known and we have learned from all over the world, thinking about Nigeria, about Mexico, where that can result in terms of pollution and environmental degradation and the loss of marine life, which of course is going to turn into loss of livelihoods for fishing communities.
Dire indeed. Well, we look forward to hearing the outcome of that case. Carmen, thank you so much for joining us. That was, of course, the program manager at Masifundise, who is Carmen Mannarino.